boys and girls. In our stories this week, we're going to talk more about the plot. The plot basically tells us what happens in the beginning, middle, and end of a story. We talk a lot in class about sequencing the story, which is when we put in order the events that happen. And basically, when we do this, we're talking about the plot, or we're finding out what happens from beginning to end in a story. So pay close attention as we read our little story read aloud today. And as we do that, I want you to be thinking of three things: what happens in the beginning, what happens in the middle, and what happens at the end. All right? But before we do that, I want you to look closely with me at this little picture. You're going to see it's a very famous story if you haven't read it before. This story is called The Tortoise and the Hare, and you could see them right here, the two main characters. Here's the hare, here's the tortoise. And if you've never read this story, we're going to go over it today just briefly through looking at these pictures. Even though they don't have words, we can use the pictures to help us tell the story. So there's the two main characters. The setting, boys and girls, if you recall, tells us where the story took place. And this story is taking place outside on a little trail where they're having the race. If we look on this side, you're going to see that word plot, and there's a beginning, middle, and end, almost like you would see in a newspaper, a comic strip. So if you have a chance to look at the newspaper, see if you can find the comics, and that they're really fun to talk about sequencing, the beginning, middle, and end, and see if you can use the pictures just like we are now to help you figure out what's going on in the story. So in the beginning, you're going to see the tortoise and the hare, and this word says start, which means they're beginning the race. In the middle of the story, we notice that the hare is sleeping under the tree, and that those letters Z, that means he's napping. He's snoring a little bit under there. But there goes the tortoise. He's pushing on. Even though he's slower, he still doesn't stop and take a break. He wants to try his best. Hare, in the middle of the story, got a little bit lazy. He thought, I'm so quick. I'm so much more quicker than that tortoise that I could stop and take a break. But when he did, look what happens at the end. The tortoise, boys and girls, won the race. Look how surprised Hare looks. He can't believe it. He thought, my goodness, how did he win? He won because he pushed on, he had perseverance, and he didn't stop. He wanted to continue the race despite him being one of the slower racers. He said, I'm going to push on, I'm going to try my best. And because he did, he won the race at the end. All right, so in our little story read aloud, I want you to pay close attention to the plot, which tells us about the beginning, middle, and end. All right? As we read, I want you to think about the plot, because good readers need to think about this in order to tell them more about the story. You can also pay close attention to who the characters were and the setting where the story takes place. All right? Our story read aloud today is called The L. The L. And this is another means of transportation. It's a train, and a lot of times, boys and girls, you see them more in cities. The L can go underground. This is more of an underground train, okay? All right. Mom was taking Liam downtown to see a parade. They were going on the elevated train, or L. Mom put a card in a slot so they could walk one by one through the entry gate. They went down the stairs to wait for the train. The train came to a stop. Its doors slid open, and they walked into the car. They found seats near the front. Off they went. Sometimes the train went underground, but mostly it traveled on tracks high above the ground. Liam watched the tall buildings come into view. The train went underground and stopped. Mom and Liam got off and climbed the stairs to get to the street. Many people were waiting for the parade to start. Liam heard a band playing. Here comes the parade. So if you need to play back the story again, you can pause this now and listen before we answer some questions together. Remember, we're going to talk about the plot. What happened in the beginning, what happened in the middle, and what happened at the end. So before I start talking about the plot, I want to ask you, boys and girls, who are the two main characters in this little story read aloud, The L? There was two people that the story talked about. Can you whisper them to a family member or friend? Awesome job. The two main characters were Mom and Liam. So Liam was the little boy and his mom, okay? And where were they going? Where were they going? Do you remember that? They wanted to go somewhere. They wanted to go see the parade. And what was the means of transportation they were using to take to the parade? Awesome job. The L, that was the title of our story. Read aloud. The L, it's an underground train. And remember, it can go underground, but it can also go above, too. All right. So it's an elevated train, all right, short for the L. Here comes another question. What happens at the beginning of the story? What happens at the beginning of the story? Good job. Mom and Liam get on the L. That happens in the beginning. What happens in the middle? All right, and remember, there could be more than one answer for this, but something in the middle that happened that I heard and listened to, the L travels above and below ground. Remember, in the middle, they were traveling above the ground and they were also traveling below the ground. Okay, what happens at the end of the story? Okay, good. Mom and Liam get off the L to see a parade downtown, okay? And you understand that at the end, Liam was hearing the band, and that gave him a sense that the parade was nearby, all right? Was this setting, was it more in a rural area or was it more in a city area? Do you remember that? We talked a little bit about that this year. A rural place, boys and girls, is where there's lots of trees and open land. And in the city, we've talked about how it's more populated with cars and people and buildings. So where do you think the setting was? Do you think it took place in a rural area or in a city area? Very good. It happened more downtown, which is the city. Awesome job. So you would see more of a setting like this in Philadelphia. And I bet you guys have been to a parade or two down there. You might have been to the Mummers Parade, or you might have been to the St. Patrick's Day Parade. Parades are really fun, and it's with big crowds of people. So I'm looking forward to being outside again like that soon with everybody, right? To celebrate and do fun things together like that. All right, guys, so remember, our stories this week, we're going to talk a lot about the plot, which is the beginning, middle, and end of what's going on in the story. We've discussed the characters in this story, who are Mom and Liam, and we also discussed the setting today. And we recall that by just looking at the different words in the story, like the L, and we know that they were going somewhere downtown, that gave us the clue that they were going in the city. Great job today, guys. Keep reading for about 20 to 30 minutes a day. You can use Epic. You can use our new ReadWorks site. And remember, take the time to review and practice your sight words as well, guys. All right, I'll see you soon. Have fun.